Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks for joining us for another episode. This week we have undefeated welterweight contender Cody Crowley joining us. Lots of good insight, so stick around for that. And on Toe to Toe, we'll list the top 5 PBC fighters pound for pound today. This is the result of a compiled poll. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first, let's jump into the PBC Fight of the Week. Last Saturday, Premier Boxing Champions presented a triple header on SHOWTIME. And in the main event, two-division world champion Danny Swift Garcia made his 154-pound debut with a majority decision win versus Jose Benavidez Jr. Mike, it was good to see Danny back at Barclays Center, his 9th appearance there. It's like a second home for him. What did you think of his overall performance?
I thought he looked really good, especially given the 19-month layoff. He fought confidently. His timing didn't seem to be off at all. He boxed really well. He seemed to be in charge of the fight almost from the beginning, I thought. I don't think Benavidez necessarily felt his punches much, but that's how it might be for him at 154, although he didn't land any huge punches. He's naturally just a smaller guy. That might be just something he has to live with. I'll add that he certainly can take a punch against a bigger guy. Yeah. Benavidez couldn't hurt him either. Overall, I thought it was a very good debut at 154 for Garcia.
Yeah, I thought he looked rejuvenated. He looked happy to be in the ring, to be boxing. Errol Spence joked that those extra pounds must have felt good for Danny, and I think they did. He showed us the boxing skill that made him an elite fighter, the underrated jab, the hand speed, things that typically don't get talked about. And then in a really candid moment, he broke down afterward, talking about mental health and depression. I was surprised and moved when I saw that.
Yeah, I was too, in part because I've just never seen that side of Danny before. I believe strongly that you have to attack these things head on to get past them. That apparently is what Garcia did. He seems to be healthier mentally and emotionally as a result of this. And high-profile athletes like him serve as role models for others who might be struggling. By speaking out like he did, he probably will have helped a lot of people. So I give him my support 100%.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, getting back to his performance, based on what you saw, can Garcia be a player at 154?
Yes, I thought that going into the fight, and I think so now. As I said, again, he's a small 154-pounder, but I could see him putting on a bit more muscle and growing into the division a little bit more, even at his age. I think his father mentioned that. More important, he's so skillful and experienced that he can compensate for any size disadvantage, at least to some degree. That said, I wouldn't pick Garcia to beat Jermell Charlo, Tin Tzu, and maybe even Sebastian Fundora. I don't know. But I think he's competitive with almost anyone. I would stay away from Tony Harrison, who called him out after the fight, if I were Garcia. A naturally bigger guy with that kind of skill, I think would be a bad matchup for him, but he could even hang with Harrison. I think the point is this got a lot of options.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe he can hang with the top 154-pounders as well. Look, this was his first fight there. Maybe give him another fight and he'll be properly settled into the weight. And anyone with his combination of skill, experience, grit, and ring IQ is a problem. What about Benavidez? Where did he go wrong in this fight?
Well, it seemed pretty clear-cut to me. He was more concerned with posturing than he was throwing punches. That was pretty frustrating to watch because he looked good in spots. He had said that he was overthinking, his punches in his previous fight, which ended in the draw. Maybe it was the same thing, although I think Garcia's ability probably had something to do with, him struggling too. Benavidez is a good fighter. He just needs to let his hands go more than he did on Saturday. And I want to add something. He looked as good as I've seen him in terms of conditioning in a long, long time. That was a positive sign for me.
Yeah, and it's not a crime to lose to, a potential Hall of Famer like Danny Garcia. Let's talk about the 114 scorecard, which came as a surprise to a lot of people. Certainly me. I assume it surprised you as well.
Yeah, I scored it. Although you didn't ask me, I scored at 118-110 for Garcia.
That sounds about right.
10 rounds to 2. I think Danny said he thought the best score would have been 17-11, which I would have been behind. It was right in there. So that's what I think of the 114 score of Waleska Roldan. I think you pronounced the name. Remember, she scored the Pacquiao Jeff Horn fight, 117-111 for Horn. So
Wow.
This isn't her first dreadful card. I have no idea how she managed to give Benavidez 6 rounds. He just simply wasn't active enough. He didn't throw enough punches to win that many rounds. He fought in flurries here and there. That was pretty much it. Honestly, I thought the 116-112 score was a little bit too generous. So I just don't know what she was watching or thinking. What really, really scares me, although it's really not that big of a deal because the 2 other judges got it right, is she had Benavidez leading after 11 rounds. In other words, Garcia had to win the last round to get a draw, otherwise he would have lost. So bad card, but the blessing is that the right guy had his hand raised in the end.
Yeah, it's pretty scary though, when you think about that. And that Horn Pacquiao card is also fairly disturbing. Who or what would you like Benavidez to do next in terms of potential opponents?
I think he needs to fight regularly to realize his potential. I'd take a step back, fight a few second-tier guys, get some wins under his belt, and then make another move to get a title shot. I don't know if that's what they have in mind. I don't know if they want to take it slowly or step by step, but that's what I would do. I don't know if he'll ever get to where he wants to get, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did. Again, I think the talent's there. He just needs to sort a few things out.
Yeah, I think fighting Danny Garcia, coming off the layoff and just that one fight, that's a pretty big leap. So a good learning experience for Jose. Give me a Jesus Ramos or Carlos Ocampo, who's on a nice run lately. I think Benavidez still has more to give. What about Danny? What's in your crystal ball for him?
Well, I always start with the guys that they call out. So he called out Keith Thurman and Erislandy Lara, which I thought was interesting. He wants to avenge his loss to Thurman, which is understandable. Thurman would have to move up in weight, though, I guess. We'll see if he's willing to do that. Thurman did respond pretty quickly to what Garcia said, in the ring afterward. It seems open to the fight. And I think another thing that makes Thurman attractive for Danny is that he would also be a smaller 154-pounder, so it would work in that way too. And he suggested he could fight Lara at 155 for a secondary WBA 160-pound belt, which I think also makes sense. Lara's maybe not quite what he was, but he's still a good fighter, big name, so that makes sense. Maybe other guys that just popped into my head, and basically I'm just going to list a bunch of good 154-pounders. Erickson Lubin, who needs a comeback fight. Maybe Fundora if they want to take that chance, but he's a tough out for anyone. Brian Castano, Terrell Gaucher, Brian Perella, all these guys are legitimate opponents for Garcia. It depends what he wants. If he wants a big fight, then options are limited. If he's open to the next level guy, at least for now, he has a lot to choose from.
Yeah, at 154, the division's just so stacked. And I like the name Danny mentioned. I like the Erislandy Lara matchup. I really like it. Danny has good experience against southpaws at 155. That's really intriguing to me. The Thurman rematch, of course. You mentioned Brian Castano and Tony Harrison. I actually like the Tony Harrison fight a lot. I love the Castano fight. Any of these top 154-pounders, let's see Danny against them. Now, in the co-feature, we had a good 10-round scrap between heavyweights Adam Konofsky and Ali Aaron Demirenzen. Demirenzen pulled off the shocker, winning a 10-round unanimous decision to place me in first place in our prediction league, Mike. Aside from the pain of falling behind, what did you think of the fight?
I'm in awe of your expertise. Well, it didn't go as I'm not surprised at all that is it Demirenzen, I think. I'm not surprised at all that he won. I thought he was dangerous going into the fight, but I didn't think he'd win the way he won. So anyway, I was mostly thinking during the fight, well, Ken is going to be a game up on me, and that's pretty much what happened. But it was actually a good heavyweight fight. The guys combined good scrap. Yeah, the guys combined to throw almost 1,800 punches according to CompuBox, and they threw a combined more than I guess it was I was going to say almost actually more than 1,000 power shots alone, which is a big number for heavyweights. I think Demarison took charge in round 3 and pretty much ran away with the victory, but it was still an entertaining fight. I just want to add, I felt bad for myself, but I also felt bad for Kopnatski. The guy was riding so high 3 fights ago, and now he's pretty much done. Boxing could be a really cruel sport.
Yeah, that's the nature of the game. Let's start with Demarison. Give us your take on him.
I think he's proven he's a good heavyweight, even if he's been under the radar, the past couple of years. He's won 6 in a row now since he was outpointed by Efe Ajagba in July 2019, with victories over some decent fighters. He was what I thought. He was pretty much what I thought he'd be in this fight. He's a good, experienced boxer and a tough guy. And the fact he actually threw more punches than a volume puncher than Kopnatski told me that he was in tremendous condition. So I have no doubt that this guy works really, really, really hard. I think he's a real professional. Can he beat guys like Fury, Usyk, Wilder, Joshua? Honestly, I doubt it, but I'd give him a chance because of what he does bring. He reminds me a little of Kubrat Pulev, who's a good, big, strong, good, solid heavyweight, but maybe not quite good enough to get to the top. But we'll see. We'll see, because this guy's still on the rise. He can surprise me.
You mentioned his conditioning. I felt like he could have been better. Look, I think he's good. He has skills, but and he's a heavyweight, so I kind of understand how his weight fluctuates. And perhaps he felt he was too light against Ajagba. He weighed 247 against Ajagba. He's been at 262 his last couple of fights. I'd like to see him around 255. He's already a high volume puncher, as you pointed out. Imagine, when he's better conditioned and can slip more shots. What about Konopsky? This is his 3rd straight loss. Obviously, as we discussed, it's the game is you're up one day, you're down the next. Where does he go from here?
Well, he seemed to say afterward that he wants to go out on a win in front of the hometown fans. That's sort of what I got from what he said. That says to me that he'll face a minimal threat, win the fight, and then maybe walk away. Now, of course, we never know. Maybe he feels good in that fight, whatever the fight is, and he thinks, hey, I could still do this. And then he fights again. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he does. As a matter of fact, it's almost more likely that that's what he does.
Yeah. I mean, he's got some thinking to do. And look, he was certainly better in this fight than the previous 2, but obviously not good enough. No matter what, he's a fun fighter, and it's always a joy to see him in the ring. Who would you like to see Demarison face next?
Well, he's already beaten Gerald Washington and now Kopnatski, 2 notable guys. I think he'll probably shoot for a guy at that level, even a bit higher. Hopes it leads to a title shot. I can see him fighting Chris Arreola if he decides he can wait for an opportunity. At least Areola's a name guy, and that would be an attractive fight for fan wise. I thought of Dominic Breazeale. A fight with Helenius, I guess, makes sense given that both of them beat Kopnatski. Charles Martin needs a comeback fight. Or maybe he rolls. I don't know if he would do this, but maybe he rolls the dice and faces a rising guy like Frank Sanchez. We'll see.
That's an interesting fight.
Yeah, we'll see who who wants to fight him. Also, there's some risk there, and he doesn't really have a big name yet. I think he's on the rise. He doesn't have a big name yet, so there's risk, and I'm not quite sure about the reward. So we just have to wait and see how things play out.
Yeah, and I'll throw in a Johnny Rice as well, who's another heavyweight that came out of nowhere last year and surprised some folks. So that'd be a good matchup too. Now, in the televised opener, unbeaten rising super lightweight Gary Antoine Russell scored a 6-round TKO over former 2 division champ Rancis Barthelemy in a very exciting back and forth, which ended with some controversy. Mike, what did you think of the stoppage?
I thought it was a bad stoppage in real time, and I kind of still do. That was a big punch he landed. Barthelemy was hurt. You could tell by the way he got up. He wasn't 100%. Now, he did follow the referee's orders to walk toward him, though. He looked to me at that moment as if he could continue, but the ref stopped it. Now, I hesitate to be overly critical because the ref looked intently. Really, you can see it on the replay. It's so clear. He looked intently into Barthelemy's eyes and just did not like what he saw. So part of me is inclined to give the referee the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's damned if you do. I thought it was premature. Look, Russell may have finished him off right then and there. I thought he would, but what if he ran into something? Barthelemy's an excellent counterpuncher. was certainly capable based on what we saw during the fight. So I felt like it robbed Barthélemy a chance to continue and Russell an opportunity of a chance to leave no doubts, But as you said, look, we're not referees, and sometimes they see things we don't. Plus, they're watching the accumulation closely. Maybe he saw something we didn't, so I'm not going to judge. That said, what did you make of Russell's performance?
So the ending, the knockout, is what I expected, but I didn't expect what came before that. I knew Barthélemy. I said Barthélemy was a good seasoned boxer, but I didn't think he'd give Russell that much difficulty. Maybe he surprised Gary by standing his ground and trading punches instead of moving. I kind of thought he would do more of the latter. I don't know. It's just the thought that came to me. And the fact Russell was fighting for the first time since his dad passed away had to be a difficult thing. Overall, he got the job done. He did what he does, which was to stop his opponent, and he gained valuable experience in that fight. He's going to be a better fighter based on what he experienced in that fight.
Yeah, I thought he looked good. I wasn't really surprised. There are things he needs to work on, which is something I thought based on his last fight. Switching speeds, protecting his body a little more, not rushing in with reckless abandon at times. But no fighter is perfect. And as you said, this might have been a really good learning experience for him. It should be, noted that this was Russell's first fight without his father and trainer, Gary Russell Sr. Russell Sr. passed away last May. Is it possible that being without that familiar voice affected Gary Antoine in this fight?
Yes, as I said, I have to think so. That family seems to be really, really tight. I know that loss hit everyone really, really hard. It can't be easy to do battle without your lifelong mentor, who also happens to be your father, in your corner, or at least at ringside. He's just been there his whole life.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how difficult that was. I think having his brother, another family member in the corner, I think that probably helped him a lot.
Yeah. And speaking of his brother, Gary Russell Jr., the former featherweight champion, how do you think he did in his role as trainer?
I think he did well. He seems like a natural trainer in there. So natural, I kind of forgot that he's still an elite fighter. He was calm and cool. I thought he gave good instructions. I thought he was like a duck in water. It seems to me that that's Gary Jr.'s next career. And I think he's going to be really, really good at it. Question for you, and I haven't been able to answer this. What other elite fighters, while they're still elite, have worked corners like that? I'm sure there's been many. I'm sure there's been some, but I couldn't think of anybody. So it's kind of a unique or unusual situation.
It is, and he was great. I mean, he gave sound advice. I liked his tone. I was really, really impressed with Mr. Gary Russell.
Surprised.
We shouldn't be. And obviously, there's good chemistry between the two. I'm looking forward, to see that continue to develop. But let's talk about Rances Barthélemy. I think he was the biggest surprise. What was your assessment of his performance?
I thought he looked good. He boxed well. He was hard to hit cleanly. I think that was part of the problem that Gary had, is he kind of a little bit frustrated because it was difficult to hit the guy cleanly. He stood his ground enough to make rounds competitive. He didn't just punch; he punched with authority. He fought like a guy who really believes he can win another world title. I know he was devastated that the fight was stopped the way it was, but I hope that doesn't discourage him too much. I think he could still hang with the elite guys in the division. I do want to add one thing, though. I mean, he did get knocked out. That's obviously the key to all of this. So that's something that he's going to have to work on too.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people expected him to box, as you said. Instead, he stood his ground and fought. I'm sure that was a surprise to you, especially the fact that he was so successful doing it.
Yeah, I just didn't expect him to be as aggressive given Russell's power. I mean, Russell's knocked out every guy he's fought. I thought he would just box more, move more than he did. Again, maybe Russell was surprised too. I mean, I don't know. I was going to say it was a smart game plan, but again, it only lasted for 5+ rounds.
Yeah.
And then I guess the game plan didn't work very well because he ended up getting caught. It definitely worked for 5+ rounds, though.
Yeah.
He looked really good until the end.
Yeah, I have to say I wasn't surprised just because, he had been talking about, working on his power, that he was coming to fight. And I know a lot of times that's just lip service,
They
but
just say it.
But when an older fighter, experienced fighter talks like that against a fighter who you naturally wouldn't do that against, it usually means they've seen something. And I think he saw that there are opportunities, if he was willing to stand in there and deliver. And he caught Russell, quite a few times. How do you view Russell based on this performance?
I still think he has pound for pound potential, but maybe he's still developing more than I realized. I guess all these guys are always developing, no matter how advanced they are. But maybe he's just a step behind where I thought he was. He needs more fights like that one to grow, to get better, to realize his potential. I'm not saying that he took a step backward or anything like that. Every fighter is going to go through trials like that. That's how you get better. He'll definitely be better the next time out. And that's not good news for prospective opponents.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, nothing changes too much for me. I think this was a good learning experience for him. Only if he learns from it. I'd like to see him switch the tempo more, change the speed and power on his punches, protect himself a little better. But again, he's been in back-to-back against two crafty former world champions and stopped both of them. That's saying something.
Yeah.
Barthélemy wants a rematch. Is that something you'd like to see?
I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch in light of the stoppage, but I'm guessing that Russell will move on to what he and his team see as bigger and better things. Russell can legitimately say, hey, I knocked the guy out. Who's next?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, assuming no rematch, who should both fighters face next?
So if I were Barthélemy and his team, I would jump right back into a fight with another contender if they can make that happen. I thought he looked that good till the end. Some guys might not want to fight him after what he did for 5+ rounds, though. I don't have a name, but I think he proved he could handle most contenders.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, I'd love to see Subriel Matias against either guy. Maybe the winner of the Alberto Puello Batir Akhmedov world title fight for Gary Antoine, or maybe even Gervonta Tank Davis, for either guy. Who knows? Now, I kind of alluded to this before. We have an update in the Prediction League standings. I alone am in first place, and that's where I'm going to be from here on out. Mark the state down, August 2nd, 2022. It's a wrap. My record is 32-6-1. Mike is a game behind at 31-7-1. Again, so close yet so far away.
There's still 1/3 of the year to go. There's hope. I'm not going to give up hope.
It's a pretty good triple header on August 20th. You might have to take some risks there. Broder, Figueroa, the undercard. You might want to take a risk there. I don't know. Let's bring in our guest this week. He is an undefeated welterweight contender on the verge of some big fights, impressing each and every single time we see him. The crippler, Cody Crowley. Cody, first things first, I look at your timeline on IG periodically, and I'm like, man, are you ever out of shape, or do you ever take a break from working out?
You know what? I do. I actually had to, because all that overtraining, it started hurting my body at one point. So it was kind of a gift and a curse, though, because it allowed me to learn my body better and just find different ways to improve my body. So I try to stay as active as I can. I don't ever want to get caught slipping.
Now it's interesting because you're a boxer, but you're a pressure fighter, and a volume puncher, which is, a big part of your success. Is your commitment to stay in shape year round a key to your ability to fight the way you do?
Definitely. Every time I step into the ring, I'm prepared to go a 12-round war, whether it's a 4-round fight or a 12-round fight. And in order to do that, you have to be in shape all the time. You just can't pick it up and be able to be a dog for 12 rounds. That's something that has to be built over years and years and years. And when you have done that, you can go in there and flip that switch and just become an animal for 12 rounds. And that's what I've done my whole entire career. The world's just kind of a little bit slow on finding out who Cody Crowley is, but I've been slowly brewing this storm for a long time, since I was a little kid. And that's the reason why you never ever see me get tired, is I've been fighting 12-round championship fights since I was 14 years old. Every time you see me, you're going to see me outpunch people. That's just going to be how it is. And I'm going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So definitely keep watching those videos, and you might pick up a thing or two.
Cody, that's interesting. I'm always amazed when a guy can throw 1,000 punches in a 12-round fight. I always tell people, just stand there and just move your arms for 3 minutes. You'll get exhausted just doing that. How difficult is it to go 12 rounds throwing 1,000 punches or thereabouts?
Well, you know what? Like I said, it used to be difficult, but now it's not difficult, right? I've adapted to becoming comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I use that to my advantage. I put guys in the ring now in positions where they don't usually thrive in, right? That pressure kind of crumbles them. I make it a mission every single time to throw over 100 punches a round. I know it's simple math, really. I throw 2 punches, you throw 1, I'm going to win the round every single round. And when you got a granite chin and, you're taking the best shots, there's really nothing else. There's really nothing you got to worry about. You've seen me get clipped a couple times where I did go down for the first time in my career, and all that was just being a little bit off balance. But I got a granite chin, and I'm gonna outpunch you every single round. There's not too many guys that I think can keep up with that, and I've been working my way to the top for a long time, knocking on the doors. And I think it's time that I kind of put that to the test and see who can really go those 12 rounds like a dog that I can.
Got it. Speaking of conditioning, is your walk around weight close to your fighting weight?
Yeah, I try not to blow up too often. I've had times in my career where I've went up and down, and I just seen how bad it was for the body, and internally what it was doing to me. So now I live my life as a fighter 24/7.
Now, Cody, you last fought in April, dominated Josesito Lopez, dropped him. You won a wide unanimous decision. Give us your thoughts on your performance.
I give it a C performance on my end, knowing what I can do. I went in there. I'm grateful for it. The circumstances that I had, a couple little hiccups that I had, it forced me to be even more uncomfortable and switch my game up. That was the very first time my back has ever touched the ropes, and that was used as a calculated tactic. But still, I had to do that because of how my body felt because of certain conditions.
You brought up certain conditions. I know you told Steve Gray Jim Gray, that you weren't 100% going into that fight. Tell us, if you can, what the issue was and how it affected you. It's way past the fight, and you dominated, so it's not like anyone's,
Yeah, no. I had some autoimmune flare-ups from previous times when I tend to overtrain my body. My body kind of starts attacking itself. So I had some of those issues, which totally drained my energy levels. And then on fight week, I ended up getting a gnarly tooth infection in one of my front teeth. So I had to go and get surgery for that the day before weigh-in. And then on weigh-in day, we didn't have a test scale. And when I showed up, 0.8 over, after making my weight cut, I had to go and reheat up again and recut weight, not knowing, what my weight was. And I didn't have a test scale. So I had to make sure I was under to go back over. And I ended up cutting an extra, 3 to 4 pounds, coming in underweight at 144 pounds. So taking that extra 4 pounds of liquids, out of your organs, you're going to feel that the next day. So I had, a couple hiccups that I had to deal with mentally, and it made me a stronger fighter. I had to go in there, remain calm, know what my energy tank was at, where my battery was, and fight accordingly. And that's what I did there. You see me pressure, but you also see me box, and you see me utilize my tools to be as effective as I can, without while limiting the damage, because that boy, he can punch. If you heard some of those body shots from ringside, he was cracking. So I was very smart and strategic about my performance.
Cody, your last 2 fights against Lopez and Kudratio Abdukakarov, you were kind of the underdog. I don't know what the betting odds were, but a good number of folks thought you'd lose those fights. What do you feel you have to do in order for people to recognize how good you truly are?
You know what? I think I just got to go out and beat their idols, beat their kings, their fighters. I don't know. I just got to keep winning. That's all I can do right now. I kind of stopped asking those questions. When, you know, the rankings, it really doesn't matter nowadays when you fight. Rankings, they're going to rank you however they want to put up. And I've been fighting my way through it. And now beating those guys that were right there in line, like a next up for Errol Spence, a mandatory, beating that should give that credibility moving forward. And, you know, it hasn't quite yet. So now the only thing is put me in there and let's see who comes out on top. I'll fight anybody, any time of day. I think the world truly, I think the boxing world is in for an exciting time. You know, a lot of these fights aren't being made because people just don't want to fight. People are too much into the money, too much into, I think, just scared too. Guys don't want to fight anymore. They get in there and they're pity-patting all this talk, building up all these fights for years and years, and then they get in there and, you know, not even really fight, play it safe. It's like these people spent all their hard-earned money. Every time I go in there, I make it my 100% intention to leave it all in the ring. These people have paid for an exciting barn burner fight, and that's what I'm looking to do every single time I come to the ring. Look at the welterweight division right now. It's stacked. All these guys, the top 10, how many world champions is there in the top 10? And guys are waiting, you know, once a year, twice a year to be fighting. We should be all mixing it up, round robining, and just having these amazing fights right now. And stop worrying about this whole this world title thing. It's a lot of picking and choosing going on.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's a new era. So is there any word on when you might be back in the ring?
Yeah, I'm looking at November. November seems to be the time slot that I'm getting ready for. And, you know, I'm on a hunt right now. I want to show the world who Cody Crowley is, and I want to show the top guys in the welterweight division that there's no more running around. Cody Crowley is here to fight anybody and everybody, and I want to become a world champion. And anybody standing in front of my way, let's go.
Is there a short list of potential opponents for November that you'd care to reveal?
Yeah, I would love to fight Stanionis. That's a fight that is basically tailor-made for me, you know, to go out there and showcase. This guy comes forward. He's punching. He's got power. And I think it is just going to be exciting fireworks. And I'm going to go in there and show the world who Cody Crowley is. And that will give me a mandatory, I hope so, a mandatory spot next up. He does have a WBA, I believe it's an interim title. I'm not too sure, but that's who I want right now, because playing these ranking games, it just doesn't seem to work. So I get that fight, I get a title, and I lock myself into a position where now I'm mandatory to get the fights that Cody Crowley deserves to get.
Now, he asked what was the short list. You mentioned Eimantas Stanionis. Does that mean that a fight with Stanionis is being discussed or is feasible?
It's definitely being discussed right now. Definitely being discussed. And
I like it.
You know, I would really love to, you know, paint him into a corner and make them take this fight.
I like it. I love it, actually. That's a great style matchup. He was on the April 16th card as well. He had a nice win over Radzab Butayev. What do you think of that performance? What do you think of Stanionis?
To be honest, I didn't even watch that fight. I was in the locker room getting ready. But he can punch. He's strong. I give him all the credit in the world, but I believe I'm just on a totally different level. You seen what happens after round 4 or 5. He starts getting slower. I start getting faster. I start getting stronger. He can punch. I can take a punch. I don't see anything there that I can't handle. And he looks like a great opponent for me to go out there and showcase my skills and put on a great show for the boxing world.
Nice. Now, you were on the Spence Ugas undercard where Spence stopped Ugas in 10. What did you think of his performance that night?
I thought he was great. Spence is a hell of a fighter, man. Hell of a fighter. And I don't think he's lost anything. If anything, I think he's getting smarter.
Wow. Now, obviously, we know Errol and Terence Crawford are currently negotiating for an undisputed match for the fall. Give us your breakdown of that fight. And who do you think wins?
Shoot, you know what? I've been waiting for that fight to get made for a while, so I can get my fight going. I want that card made. I was trying to build myself up, in the fall on his undercard, and now there's nothing else I would love better than to fight on that in November, and it's looking like around the same time. So quicker they can get it done, the better for me. But shoot, if someone wants to step out of the way, I'll gladly sign that. I would love to fight Spence in a heartbeat. It seems like there's issues with fights being made. I don't know what's going on there, but a fight with Cody Crowley is pretty easy to make, and it only takes one phone call.
I like it.
So,
now, well, if they do fight, what do you think happens?
I think Spence.
I
got Spence winning that fight.
Why do you think he wins?
I just see that pressure as being too much. Just too much, too smart, too big. He's a giant 147 pounder, strong. And I see him walking through him. If he doesn't give Crawford enough time to think, and make those calculated chess moves that he does, he's got a great chance of getting him out of there.
That's an interesting assessment. Now, Keith Thurman is also a fight that's out there. Is he someone you'd be interested in fighting? Maybe someone you've had your handlers talk to about?
Keith, yeah, I've been trying to get that fight going for a long time. For some reason, it just no bite happens. I think it's great fight-wise, business-wise. Maybe they just think that I still don't do nothing for him. He's kind of walking out of the door, and I think he's looking for that big payday. And fighting this 21-0, top-ranked fighter who not many people know about yet outside of the boxing world is kind of what's the point? Why take that big of a dog fight this point of your career?
Yeah,
I think you'll take an easier fight and easier money.
So we're looking at Stanionis possibly. We hope that happens, because that's a great matchup. Cody, anything in closing you want to say to your fans?
I just want to thank everybody for all the support. Thank everybody back in Canada, Peterborough, my hometown, and everybody in the boxing world. If you don't know who Cody Crowley is, you're going to know very, very soon. And I look forward to becoming a world champion. I'm representing PBC and Al Heyman. And I want to thank you guys for having me on today. Appreciate you.
Cody, we appreciate you, man. Can't wait to see you back in the ring, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
It's time for Mike and I to go toe to toe. This week we polled 22 boxing insiders and asked them, who are the top 5 PBC fighters today, pound for pound? We're excited to present the results to you. Let us know what you think. Mike, why don't you kick things off with number 5?
Okay. Number 5, David Benavidez. What's not to like about David Benavidez? He's a big, strong, fit, mean-spirited super middleweight who lives to beat the hell out of you and generally does. Those power shots don't land by accident. He's excellent at setting up those power combinations, which guys just can't stand up to. And one area in which I think he's underrated is his hand speed. We think of his physicality when we think of him, but he's also a quick-handed, athletic guy. So he's also in my top 5 of favorite guys to watch. Love this guy.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, unbeaten 2-time world champion. Can we get this dude a big fight? Somebody please step up and take it. He's doing everything he can to get it, and I think he deserves it. Still young, only 25, so I believe it'll come within his next couple fights. I can't wait to see how he performs. Number 4 on this list, Stephen Fulton Jr. Honestly, this guy could be higher in my book, and he was higher on several lists. I mean, he looks special. The undefeated unified super bantamweight champion. This guy has beaten 9 undefeated fighters already. He's on quite a run right now. That victory over former unified champ Danny Roman was brilliant. Regardless of where you have him, Fulton is a top pound for pounder and deserves to be on everyone's list.
I really like Fulton. He might be the best combination of athlete and pure boxer of all the guys that we're talking about here. He isn't the biggest puncher in the world, but he's just so good technically that really doesn't matter much. Now I wanted to point out, he didn't make my top 5. He's number 6 for me personally, in part because of his fight with Brandon Figueroa, who he narrowly outpointed. I think it was a split decision, a majority decision. I think his lack of power played a role in that fight. He couldn't give Figueroa a reason to back off, but I need to be clear about this. I don't want to focus too much on that, though, because I think overall the guy is a really special fighter and definitely pound for pound guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you have for what's next?
Number 3 is Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. I've said this multiple times, but I think Davis and Jaron Ennis, who also didn't make my list because of his resume is not as good as some guys, but the talent is crazy. Anyway, I think Davis and Ennis might have the biggest upside of any current PBC fighters. When you combine his skill with his crazy power, you get a truly, truly special fighter. That's not hyperbole. It's 100% true. He's a little like Deontay Wilder in that his fights end up being spectacles because of the inevitable way they end with a brutal, spectacular knockout. That's one reason that he's so popular. Fans just eat that stuff up, and he delivers every time. And he's doing it against top-level opposition. It's not as if he's knocking out bums. He's doing it against good fighters. Gamboa, Santa Cruz, Barrios, Cruz, Romero. The only question for me is, how great does this guy get?
Yeah, and Pedraza. I mean, the list goes on. What more can you say about this guy? It should be noted that he got the second most votes for second place on this list. So a lot of folks think highly of this man, and rightfully so. A young veteran, a big game performer, clutch, one of the most underrated resumes in the sport, period. Through 3 divisions, fantastic ring IQ, athleticism, grit, speed, and of course that power. Gervonta, everything. This guy's star power just keeps rising, and I truly hope we see that Ryan Garcia fight next. Let's move on to number 2. This man was the only other fighter to receive first place votes, the undisputed super welterweight champion Jermell Charlo. Honestly, it should be 1A and 1B in my opinion. Shout out to Derek James. 15 years. We've seen what this man has done. Obviously, we can go over what he's accomplished these past few years, but let's dig a little deeper. I heard Stephen Breadman Edwards talk about what Jermell did as a prospect, and if you don't know, go back and look at this man's resume. Folks still talking about Gabe Rosado. I think he's on a card this year, feature on the card, and with all due respect to Rosado, Jermell Charlo washed him 8 years ago. That's how long this cat has been doing it. He's beaten a who's who of 154 pounders. He's a throwback. He's a 90s fighter, if you will. His style doesn't emulate anyone else's. Like you look at fighters today, they're trying to fight like Floyd or Roy or Andre Ward or Hopkins. Jermell Charlo is his own style of fighter. He's adaptable, iron-willed, iron-fisted. Just everything you want a fighter to be. If he isn't on your pound for pound list, it's because you're really weird or sad. I don't get it, but that's okay. I think a lot of fans recognize this gem. I mean, a gem that boxing has in Jermell Charlo, a guy who takes on any and every single contender in his division, will run it back, if he has any issues whatsoever. A truly special fighter.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Terry Norris, but with a better chin.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 90s. I think Jermell has won pretty much everybody over finally by now. He's just a scary all-around fighter. He has all the qualities you look for in a special fighter: the natural talent, the skill set, the ring smarts. But he also has like upper echelon punching power and a passion for the sport of fire that I think is a key to his success. I mean, the guy is just like, I don't know. He's so driven to be great. You could see it in the ring in his performances. He had a few slip-ups, lost to Tony Harrison and a draw with Brian Castano, largely because he got outworked, but he responded by knocking out both guys, in the rematches. So he's just become a true star.
Yeah, he absolutely has. And our number one is another true star as well. Why don't you tell us about him?
Who else? Errol Spence Jr. Another guy who's got it all: the God-given gifts, the skill, the ring acumen, the power, the durability. I can go on and on and on and on. He's unbeaten, even though he's faced a string of elite opponents, guys like Kell Brook, Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Yordenis Ugas. Spence might not be as dynamic a fighter as some guys. He's not flashy, but he certainly has a winning formula. I hope we get to see him versus Terence Crawford. If that fight happens and Spence wins that fight, I mean, damn, he ascends to rarefied air. He's knocking on the door right now, and he's capable of doing that. I don't know if he's going to beat Crawford, but he's capable of beating Crawford.
Yeah, I mean, that would be one of the greatest welterweight runs in history. Just a special fighter. I think you said it all. He can box, he can brawl, inside, outside, however you want it. Running through the 147-pound division like it's nothing. And again, this is one of the most talent-laden divisions in the sport, if not the best overall. But as you said, we all know what we want next. Currently 4 belts, 2 kings vying for all 4, undisputed. I hope we see it. Now, before we go, I want to point out that who the honorable mentions were, because there were others who had votes. Jermall Charlo had votes that went as high as 2nd place, but ultimately he lands in the honorable mentions. Deontay Wilder also received several votes, as did Caleb Plant, Arislandi Lara, and Ray Vargas. Altogether, I think a very nice list.
Yeah, all these guys are such good fighters. I just wanted to mention, I had a comment for 2 of the guys that received honorable mention. One is Jermall Charlo. I don't know why people are sleeping on Jermall, if that's what they are. He's unbeaten. He's an excellent boxer. I think he's a better pure boxer than his brother. And he has a strong resume. I don't think he has quite the fire and the punching power of Jermell, who I think deserves to be higher than Jermall pound for pound. But Jermall is the real deal to me. I guess some people are going to be surprised if he beats the Canelos and the Benavidezes, which I think is a realistic possibility. And I also just wanted to mention something about Ray Vargas. So my next favorite among the honorable mentions is Ray Vargas. I just like his length combined with his boxing ability and solid punching power. He has a way of making life hell for his opponents, as he did most recently with Mark Magsayo. Vargas is a really good all-around fighter, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is. And look, with names like this on the list, this whole thing could switch up, in a matter of months. Imagine if Vargas fights, Leo Santa Cruz next and wins, or Arislandi Lara gets a big fight against Jermall Charlo, the winner of that, and where they might move to altogether. So lots of great fighters and lots of great fights on the way. And that's going to do it for this week's show. We want to thank Cody Crowley, of course, for joining us, and you guys, as always, for tuning in. Be sure to check us out next week for more boxing banter, more interviews right here on the PBC Podcast.